Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. It has been a moment and now I'm back with some new content. This time round, I want us to look at the effect of boarding schools on children aged 13 years and below. I know most of you who are watching me, some of you could have gone to boarding schools during their primary days. Personally, I went to a boarding school when I was in class 4. I don't remember how old I was. Yeah, and I know most of my friends who schooled with me during those days, they really didn't like the experience. And I believe it is because we were very young, very young. Remember, in class 4, we were tiny and we didn't find the environment to be that friendly. However, before we get deep into the details of the negative impact of boarding schooling to young children, let us just try to look at the positivity. Children who attend boarding schools, they are believed to have excellent academic performance. And that is because most parents believe when they take their children to boarding schools, the environment is conducive and there is frequent monitoring by the teachers, and that makes the children to concentrate more on the academic work. I believe that is the major reason as to why parents believe in boarding schools. They just want their children to excel. They believe that their kids will enjoy better studying conditions. And they still believe that their kids are going to be self-reliant. So by taking their children to boarding schools, they believe that there is a self-independence. And that is by the fact that the children become responsible, they're able to take care of themselves. But now, I'm just wondering, or I'm worried. Nowadays, parents are taking children to boarding schools for wrong reasons. Why am I saying that? Families have become broken. Families are unstable. Parents have become busy. Parents do not trust the house managers. And immediately a child hits the age of going to a boarding school, they do not hesitate. They immediately take those children to boarding schools because they believe that their children will be secure. I'm trying to imagine and I want to pose a question. Is it really true that the parents are running away from their responsibilities? Now, what is the impact of boarding schools on young children? I know we have boarding schools that admit even grade 1 children, grade 2, and you can imagine at that time how those children are tiny. There's that detachment from their families, from their parents. It goes without saying, at that age, those children lack parental love. And what is the impact? Because at that given time, the parents believe that it is a unique and alternative upbringing way of their children. Now, kids suffer from hidden trauma. And that is because there is that prolonged separation. Imagine in a whole year, a child stays in school for around 9 months and then stays with the parent for 3 months. And you find that the working parents, they rarely have time for their children. So you find that these children become depressed. No one might realize that they are depressed. They start being irritable. They get angry every other time. And with time, you find that these kids, they have difficulties in forming relationships. Different children have different experiences in the boarding schools. There are those who go to boarding schools and actually have nasty experiences. There are those who manage to cope well and they are good. But now imagine a child who has been taken to a boarding school at a tender age. This child is bullied. This child is sexually abused. What happens to the mental development of this child in the later stages of development? What kind of an adult is raised? What kind of mental stability is this child going to have in the adulthood stage? So when the child undergoes psychological torture, in the long run, it lowers the self-esteem, it lowers the personality of the child. You can find that a child was an extrovert, but because of the nasty experiences, then this child turns to be an introvert, keeps to himself or herself. Some goes into a corner, they cry the whole day. And now imagine a scenario whereby the parents are absentees. They're not available for their children. What happens at that time? At times, those children, they have what we call homesick. I remember when we used to go to school, a few days after reporting, we already start making timetables, we start making calendars, and we are there ticking the days. At times we used to have a stupid mentality that if we cut the tail of a lizard, then the days are going to move faster. You can imagine that homesick, it is a kind of bereavement because the child is grieving. The child misses home. The child misses the parents. The child misses the good meals. The child misses good sleep, or rather enough sleep. So that homesick feeling for a young child, personally, I feel it is not a good feeling. It negatively impacts the child. Now you can imagine a day scholar. When he or she goes back home in the evening, the parents are there to tell him or her that my daughter, I love you, my son, I love you. There is that assurance. But here is a young child in a boarding school. After the day's work, maybe those days when there was a lot of beating. Nowadays, caning is prohibited. Back those days, we had thorough beating. You have to do manual. You have to do cleaning. If you don't do that, your day ends up messy. You are stressed. You feel that you're missing something. So the mental development was actually disrupted. At the same time, boarders are forced to adapt to abrupt and irrevocable loss. Still, children are living without love. Not all children become favorites in school. We have those ones who turn to be naughty, cheeky, mischievous, truants. All those characters children develop while they're in boarding schools. Now you can imagine at that tender age, what kind of an adult is being raised. I'm not saying that all children who go to boarding schools, they are negatively impacted, no. We have those who came out bold, strong, confident, and excelled well in their academics. But still, we have the wrecked ones. It is in boarding schools whereby children are introduced into drug and substance abuse. That is, if the systems or the structures of the school are not well developed, if there are no cultures, because we have children who can sneak out, then come back to school. That is after they have gone either to chew some miraa or taste some liquor in the village at that tender age. At that tender age. And therefore, in my own opinion, I could like to say that before we take our children to boarding schools, let us do a lot of guidance and counseling. Let us direct our children. Let them not believe that we are taking them to boarding schools so that we can separate them, or because of our busy schedules, or because of our broken families. Because I know their children, when they are taken to boarding schools, the school becomes their happy place, because they are far from the wrangles at home, the abuses at home. Maybe at times they go hungry, they sleep hungry, they have nowhere comfortable to sleep. To some children, it is a happy place. But now what happens to those who afford all the comfort, but when you take them to boarding schools, their mental development becomes messed. Otherwise, I'm a beneficiary of a boarding school. Yeah, I studied in a boarding school from class 4 to standard 8. And to me, it balanced. Personally, my mental development was not that affected, but I have my friends who still have a bad feeling about their stay in the boarding schools. As old as they are, when we're discussing, they could not even wish to go back to a boarding school or even take their children to the boarding school. And that is because during those days, our boarding school, there was no, what do we call it? We used to call it sonyo. I don't know the origin of that word, but there were no eateries. You could not be brought either sweets or anything during visiting day. And then we used to be beaten. There was a lot of caning. We used to call it a dip. And now that, and then those days, our teachers were really crude. They were too harsh. And now that made most of us to develop a negative attitude towards the boarding schools. It was not fun. Actually, it was not fun. But I enjoyed the bit where we had the co-curricular activities. Some of us, we love dancing, singing. So that one made our life in school a little bit easy. Otherwise, it was not a walk in the park. As much as we're here now, all grown, and all my schoolmates who went through the boarding school, they're really doing well in life. However, all that is needed is to improve the conditions so that we look at the mental stability of the young children, especially those who take their children to boarding schools at the tender age. I wish to stop there, and I'm quite grateful to those who've been supporting my channel, to those who keep viewing my content. I urge you to keep up with the same spirit. The Premier Gang, gang. Thank you very much for your support. As the Iron Lady, I'm quite impressed, I'm grateful, and I appreciate your efforts. Kindly keep subscribing, keep watching, hit the bell notification so that you can always get notified when I visit this channel. Thank you very much, and may God bless you.